imagine stepping out of a completely sterile photography studio and just walking straight into a breathtaking Vogue-inspired editorial spread.
Oh, that sounds incredible.
Right. Except in this scenario, you are the star. And instead of staring blankly at the camera with that, that classic aloof model expression, you are mid-laugh.
Yeah.
There are real tears in your eyes. The moment is entirely unscripted.
Completely raw.
Exactly. I mean, for decades, wedding photography was essentially an attendance record. It was like this awkward, incredibly expensive school picture day.
It really was.
People just lined up in these rigid rows. They smiled until their cheeks physically hurt and documented the fact that, yes, Aunt Linda was indeed present.
Just proving everyone showed up.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But we're looking at a seismic shift right now. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We're looking at the defining visual trend of 2026, which is officially dubbed high-fashion editorial wedding photography with real emotion. And it is completely rewriting the rules of how we capture our most pivotal moments.
It's a massive departure from the norm.
It really is. So today, on this deep dive, we're tearing down exactly how photographers are engineering this seemingly impossible blend of, well, high art and raw humanity. We're looking at the profound psychology behind why we are certainly rejecting perfection.
Which is such an important cultural piece of this.
Absolutely. And practically speaking, we're getting into how you actually navigate the wildly fragmented wedding industry to hire the people who can pull this off. Specifically, we'll talk about using the dual-engine platform Weddizer for all your media hiring.
Right. It is a profound transition, honestly. What we are looking at here is not just a passing fad or some new preset pack that happens to be trending on social media algorithms.
Yeah, it's not just a new filter.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a fundamental cultural shift in visual literacy. It changes what modern couples value on, one of the most important days of their lives.
So it's about what we're actually trained to see now.
Yes, because we have to remember that today, everyone has a 4K camera right in their pocket. We're all constantly bombarded with highly curated imagery.
True, we look at professional photos all day long.
Right, and because of that, the baseline aesthetic palette of the average person is incredibly refined now. You want that premium magazine quality look because, frankly, that is the visual language of luxury in 2026.
That makes total sense. We know what good lighting looks like now.
We do, but simultaneously there is this deep, almost urgent human need for genuine, unscripted connection.
Oh, absolutely. We don't want to feel fake.
Right. We want the luxury, but we completely refuse to sacrifice our authenticity to get it. That is the exact intersection where this new editorial style lives, and I have to say, it's an incredibly difficult tightrope to walk.
Which makes me want to dive straight into the actual mechanics of this, because when we smash the words editorial and emotion together, it kind of sounds like an oxymoron.
It does sound contradictory on paper.
Yeah. If you think about the anatomy of a high-fashion editorial shoot, say, a spread in Vanity Fair or Vogue, it is a highly, highly controlled environment.
Meticulously controlled.
We have dramatic lighting, intricate composition, luxury wardrobe. Every single element, down to the stray hair on a model's forehead, is curated.
Nothing is left to chance in those setups.
Right. So how do you take a process that requires that extreme level of micromanagement and apply it to a live event that is, let's be honest, notoriously chaotic and full of unpredictable emotional outbursts?
That is the multi-$1,000 question right there.
Sure.
Look, historically, you basically had two choices in the wedding industry.
You had to pick a lane.
Exactly. You hired a fine art photographer, and they would give you those perfectly posed, almost statuesque portraits.
The ones that take forever to shoot.
Right. It looked incredible, but it took 3 hours to set up, and the couple felt like props at their own wedding.
Yeah, just standing there holding a pose.
Or you went the complete opposite direction and hired a purely photojournalistic documentary-style photographer.
The fly-on-the-wall approach.
Right. They ran around catching messy, beautiful, candid moments, but because they were just reacting to whatever happened in the environment, they had very little control over the lighting or the background.
So you got the raw emotion, but you might also get a glowing green exit sign literally growing out of the groom's head.
Exactly. The 2026 editorial trend is a true mechanical hybrid of those two extremes.
But wait, I have to push back on how that actually works in practice, though. Because that high-fashion rigidity, the perfect posture, the serious, striking expressions, seems inherently at odds with candid emotion.
It seems that way, yes.
I mean, if a groom completely breaks down in tears at the altar, or a bride throws her head back in a massive, unladylike laugh during the toasts. How does a photographer fit that into a high-fashion aesthetic?
Without it looking like a mistake, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Without the final photo album looking completely jarring. The energy of a weeping groom is just fundamentally different from a stoic fashion model.
That tension is exactly what makes the style so captivating, though. The contrast you're pointing out isn't a flaw. It is the entire mechanism of the art form.
Oh, really? How so?
To understand how it works, you have to mentally separate the environment from the subject.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So the environment, meaning the lighting, the luxury wardrobe, the architectural background, the focal length of the lens, all of that is strictly editorial. It is meticulously planned.
So the stage is set, basically.
Exactly. The stage is rigid, but the subjects within that beautifully curated environment are allowed to live, breathe, and react entirely naturally.
Ah, I see.
I like to think of it as building a beautifully lit, perfectly designed fishbowl.
A fishbowl?
Yes, you curate the water, the plants, and the light perfectly. But once the fish are in there, you don't tell them how to swim.
Okay, that fishbowl analogy is absolutely perfect. So the photographer isn't telling the groom, okay, look down at a 45-degree angle and squeeze out a single tear.
No, not at all. That would ruin it.
They are simply doing the architectural work beforehand. They are ensuring that when he naturally cries, he just happens to be standing in a pocket of gorgeous cinematic light and the background behind him is visually stunning.
Precisely. The stage is set, but the acting is completely unscripted. You get the aloof, perfect environment, but the emotion cutting through it is raw and real.
It creates this incredible juxtaposition.
It really does. And the mechanics of pulling that off require immense technical skill. The photographer actually has to anticipate the emotion before it even happens.
Because they can't pose it after the fact.
Right. They see the father of the bride walking over to his daughter. They know an emotional moment is about to occur, so they rapidly position themselves so that the available light is hitting the subjects in a dramatic editorial way.
Wow, so they are shooting documentary-style action, but within an editorial framework.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And that leads us right into the core philosophy of why this is even happening. Because yes, the aesthetics are undeniable, but it's the real emotion aspect that really anchors this movement.
It's the beating heart of the trend.
Right. If couples in 2026 just want to look like absolute royalty, why aren't they just hiring standard commercial fashion photographers for the weekend, getting those flawless, statuesque shots and calling it a day?
Because aesthetics alone are ultimately hollow.
Hollow, really?
Yes, aesthetics are what draw your eye to an image, sure, but emotion is what makes you keep staring at it. Emotion makes it timeless.
That's a great distinction.
If you hire a purely commercial fashion photographer for a wedding, you will absolutely get perfection. The lighting will be mathematically flawless.
Your skin will look amazing.
But perfection without humanity is incredibly forgettable. The principle driving this trend is authenticity over perfection.
And we are definitely craving authenticity right now.
Absolutely. Perfectly executed poses are beautiful to look at initially, but it is the genuine laughter, the unexpected tears, and the subtle, fleeting expressions that actually create lasting memories.
So it's about combining the two.
Yes. A fashion photographer gives you a photo where your jawline looks incredible. A high-fashion editorial wedding photographer gives you a photo where your jawline looks incredible while you are looking at your partner with complete, unadulterated awe.
Oh, I love that. It's like the difference between looking at a glossy postcard of Paris versus watching a deeply moving, beautifully shot indie film set in Paris.
That is a phenomenal comparison.
Thanks. Because, you know, the postcard is just an image. You look at it once, you say, oh, that's pretty, and you toss it in a drawer. But the indie film is something you actually feel.
It has a soul.
Exactly. It creates a narrative arc. When you look at an album shot in this emotional editorial style, you aren't just looking at the bride's dress.
Right, you're looking past the fabric.
You're feeling her nervous anticipation right before she walks down the aisle. You feel the cathartic release of the joyful celebration at the reception.
What's fascinating here is that this represents a total psychological rejection of the superficiality that plagued the wedding industry for the last 2 decades.
Oh, the toxic positivity of weddings.
Yes, exactly. For a long time, the industry pushed this highly toxic idea of the flawless day. Nothing goes wrong. No one sweats. No one ever cries ugly tears.
Which is just not real life. I mean, weddings are stressful.
They are. But modern couples are aggressively pushing back against that false narrative. They are demanding that their luxury experiences be grounded in reality.
So they want the fancy stuff. They want it to feel real.
Exactly. They want the beautiful custom gown and the stunning historic venue, but they also want to acknowledge that weddings are overwhelming, highly emotional, and sometimes chaotic days.
By insisting on real emotion anchoring the high-end aesthetic, they're basically proving that perfection and authenticity do not have to be mutually exclusive.
They can absolutely coexist.
And from a psychological standpoint, photos that are rooted in true emotion evoke a much deeper connection for whoever looks at them, even generations later.
Long after the trends fade.
Right. When you look at an old black and white photo of your grandparents on their wedding day, you don't care if their pose was perfectly symmetrical.
No, you're looking at their faces.
Exactly. You care about the way he's looking at her. You care about the tight grip of their hands. This trend is essentially pre-engineering that legacy.
Exactly. It is legacy building through an editorial lens.
So we understand the why and the philosophy behind all this, but how is this actively manifesting? What does the visual landscape of 2026 actually look like if you open one of these luxury wedding albums?
It looks very specific.
Yeah, because there are several incredibly specific trends driving this movement right now, and it all starts with light. We are seeing a massive shift towards cinematic lighting.
This is a huge shift from the past 10 years.
It really is. For years, the dominant trend was that light and airy style, where everything was blown out, incredibly bright, super pastel tone.
Pinterest standard.
Right. But now it's all about soft shadows, golden hour tones, and highly dramatic contrast. Why the sudden darkness?
The death of the light and airy trend is a fascinating study in visual fatigue, honestly. It was popular for a long time because it was safe.
Safe how? Like hard to mess up.
Exactly. When you overexpose an image, you wash out imperfections. It makes everyone's skin look smooth. But by blowing out all the shadows, you also wash out all the depth. The images look totally flat.
Like a soap opera lighting setup.
Right. Cinematic lighting, which utilizes deep shadows and intentional contrast, often called chiaroscuro lighting, introduces drama. It replicates the way human eyes actually see the world in real time.
Which makes it feel more authentic.
Exactly, which makes the image feel more visceral and real. The deep shadow literally guides your eye precisely to the highlight, which is usually the emotional expression on the subject's face.
But I mean, cinematic lighting only goes so far if you're standing in a visually chaotic room with like terrible hotel carpet.
Oh, the pattern carpet is a photographer's nightmare.
Right. If the lighting sets the mood, the background has to provide the context, which perfectly explains the second major trend we're seeing, minimalist luxury.
This one is crucial.
There is a huge move toward clean, uncluttered backgrounds and highly refined details. It's less about abundance and more about curation.
Right, because if you are trying to highlight raw emotion, anything else in the frame that draws the eye is just a distraction.
So you don't want massive centerpieces blocking the groom's tears.
Exactly. Minimalist luxury isn't about having a cheap or empty wedding. It's about intentionality. It is actively removing visual noise.
Quality over quantity.
Precisely. You don't need 20 different floral arrangements competing for attention if you have one perfectly designed sculptural installation. This minimalism elevates the environment, making the couple and their emotions the undeniable focal point.
And that ties directly into how photographers are actually shooting these scenes. The third trend is what they call the documentary meets editorial approach.
This is the actual execution of that fishbowl metaphor we talked about earlier.
Right, how they physically capture it.
Yes, and the mechanics of this are quite specific. A photographer utilizing this approach might use a longer lens, say an 85mm or even a 200mm lens.
Which means they are standing pretty far away.
Exactly. This allows them to physically stand 30 or 40 feet away from the couple. They are compressing the background to make it look incredibly grand and editorial.
But they aren't hovering over the couple's shoulders.
Right. Because they are physically far away, they aren't intruding on the intimate moment. They establish a fly-on-the-wall documentary ethos.
So the couple basically forgets the camera's even there.
Exactly. Which is the only thing that allows that genuine emotion to surface in the first place.
It's invisible direction.
Yeah.
You put them in the sweeping hallway with the perfect light, you step back 50 feet, and you just let them be a couple.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Speaking of sweeping hallways, the fourth trend is arguably the most visually striking to me. Destination-inspired backdrops.
Oh, this trend is everywhere right now.
Couples are heavily utilizing European-style architecture, grand scenic landscapes, and just really rich cultural elements. It's almost as if the location itself is acting as a secondary character in the love story.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The environment as a secondary character.
Yeah, because the architecture isn't just the place they happen to be standing, it's actively framing the emotion.
Think about the psychological weight of architecture for a second.
Okay, lay it on me.
A couple sharing a quiet, tearful moment in a standard windowless hotel conference room feels vastly different than that exact same moment shared under a 14th century stone archway or, on a cliffside overlooking the Amalfi Coast.
The vibe is just completely different.
Exactly. The grand, historical, or scenic nature of the backdrop adds a sense of permanence and gravity to the fleeting emotional moment. It elevates the documentary shot into a piece of fine art.
And when you combine the grand architecture with the cinematic lighting, you get this incredibly rich tapestry. But wait, the photographer doesn't just stay 50 feet away the whole time, right?
No, definitely not.
Because the final major trend for 2026 is the exact opposite of that wide architectural shot. It's emotional close-ups.
Correct. We're talking about the macro details.
Right, the tight shots.
This is extremely tight, intimate framing that focuses exclusively on raw expressions. It might be a frame entirely filled by two hands gripping each other tightly during the vows.
Or a close-up of a single tear falling onto a silk lapel.
Exactly. You've stripped away the grand architectural background, you've removed the minimalist luxury details, and the camera pushes right in. It is intensely intimate.
And I imagine the contrast in the final album is stunning.
It is. The juxtaposition in the final album, moving from a massive, sweeping architectural wide shot to a hyper-intimate close-up of hands, creates incredible narrative pacing.
It really tells a complete story. Okay, so we've mapped out the entire visual language. We know what cinematic lighting does. We know how documentary meets editorial. We understand the psychology.
And we have the blueprint.
Right. But recognizing all these beautiful 2026 trends is one thing. Actually executing them, that requires finding incredibly specific top-tier talent.
It requires an absolute master of the craft.
Yeah, you can't just hire your cousin who bought a nice DSLR camera at Best Buy and expect them to pull off cinematic lighting, minimalist luxury, and invisible documentary shooting simultaneously.
No, absolutely not. And this is where the fantasy of the mood board collides violently with the reality of the wedding industry.
It's a rude awakening for a lot of couples.
It really is. The biggest point of failure for couples today isn't a lack of vision. They build these stunning, highly articulate Pinterest boards of editorial emotional photography.
We all have those boards.
Right. But they have absolutely no idea how to evaluate a photographer's technical ability to actually deliver it. The wedding industry is notoriously fragmented.
It's totally decentralized.
It is a wild west of independent contractors, and frankly, Instagram has made it incredibly easy to fake expertise.
Right, because anyone can curate an Instagram grid.
With their top 9 luckiest shots from the past 5 years.
Exactly. You see a beautiful, moody photo of a couple on a cliff, and you think, great, this person is a master, I'll hire them.
But you aren't seeing the rest of the day.
Exactly. You aren't seeing the other 900 photos they delivered to that couple that might be completely out of focus or terribly lit because they moved indoors. The information asymmetry between the buyer and the vendor is just massive.
It's a huge problem. The buyer, who has probably never hired a professional photographer before, doesn't know the right questions to ask. They don't know the red flags. They don't know how to verify consistency.
Which is exactly why specialized platforms have become the absolute critical center of gravity for planning a modern wedding.
You really can't navigate the industry without them anymore.
Which brings us to the most practical and crucial part of our deep dive today. How couples are navigating this incredibly niche hiring process using Weddizer.
Weddizer has completely changed the game here.
It really has. Because Weddizer isn't just a phone book of vendors. It's designed to actively solve that information asymmetry you just mentioned. It operates as a dual-engine platform.
Which is its biggest strength.
Right. On one side, you have a powerful business directory for hiring. But on the other side, you have a deeply curated educational article section.
That dual structure is critical. Think about it. If you just hand an uneducated consumer a directory of 1,000 photographers, you haven't solved their problem.
You've just overwhelmed them.
Exactly. You've just given them a different, far more expensive type of anxiety. Weddizer addresses the core issue by pairing discovery with deep education. It acts as a bridge.
Let's walk through how you, the listener, would actually use this. Imagine you are planning this high-fashion editorial wedding. Before you even look at a single photographer's pricing or availability, Weddizer directs you to their article section.
You get educated first.
Right. You're reading expert guidance on what this specific niche actually entails. You are learning the vocabulary of the industry.
Which is so empowering.
It is. You learn the difference between traditional flash photography and off-camera cinematic strobe lighting. You learn why a photographer's approach to the timeline matters.
Yes, the platform acts as an educational matchmaker. It is completely removing the friction of the unknown.
You aren't going in blind anymore.
Exactly. By offering this guidance through their niche articles before you jump into the directory, it ensures you are armed with the right criteria. If you don't know what makes letting cinematic, you simply won't know how to evaluate a portfolio.
You wouldn't know what you're looking at.
Right. Weddizer educates you first, giving you the visual references and the technical vocabulary you need to spot the real talent versus the Instagram pretenders.
And once you have that education, then you cross over into the business directory side of Weddizer to do the actual hiring.
With confidence this time.
Exactly. You can browse top-rated professionals, but the filtering is where the real magic happens. You aren't just searching by city or price.
You can get incredibly specific.
Right. You can filter your searches specifically by niche styles, clicking editorial, candid, luxury. And here's the kicker. You don't just see their highlight reel.
This is the most important feature.
Yeah, Weddizer lets you view actual full-scale portfolios and real wedding shoots to verify the talent.
That feature cannot be overstated. Viewing a full, real wedding shoot is the absolute only way to verify consistency.
Because anyone can get lucky once.
Precisely. You need to ask yourself, can this photographer maintain that high-fashion editorial aesthetic from the chaotic getting-ready process in a cramped hotel room through the ceremony under harsh midday sun and into a dark reception hall at midnight?
Can they pivot when it inevitably rains?
Exactly. A full gallery on Weddizer proves that they have mastery over lighting in every possible scenario, not just at golden hour on a perfect cliffside.
It completely centralizes what used to be a deeply fragmented process. You get the education, you filter the exact niche talent, you verify their full galleries, and then the platform allows you to directly compare different photographers and contact them right then and there.
It's a seamless workflow.
It takes what used to be weeks of anxiety-inducing internet sleuthing and distills it into a smooth, efficient, highly curated process.
It empowers the couple to make the best possible hiring decision for their specific event based on data and education, rather than just, crossing their fingers, sending a massive deposit, and hoping for the best.
Okay, so let's play this out. You've used Weddizer, you read the articles, you learned the vocabulary, you filtered the directory, you verified the full galleries, and you found the absolute perfect photographer who completely nails this 2026 editorial vibe.
You've secured the talent.
You've booked them. But your job as the couple isn't entirely done, is it? You can't just show up on the wedding day, blindly trust the photographer, and expect magazine-worthy magic to happen automatically.
Definitely not. You have to participate in the process.
So how do you, as the subject, work with this professional to ensure this massive vision actually materializes on the big day?
That is a crucial transition in the timeline. Hiring the talent is merely step one. Executing the vision is step two. And execution requires intense collaboration.
What does that look like practically?
One of the primary best practices outlined in the materials is meticulous planning. You have to work closely with the photographer long before the wedding day to architect the timeline.
Because the timeline dictates the light.
Exactly. This means discussing specific locations, understanding exactly where the sun will be at different times of the day, and identifying unique architectural landmarks at your venue that actually support that editorial vibe.
Right, because if you want that dramatic cinematic sunset shot on the terrace, but you schedule family formals inside during that exact 20-minute window, you've completely sabotaged your own aesthetic.
You've missed the opportunity entirely. You have to build the timeline around the light. And equally important, you are building in buffers so that you don't feel rushed, because feeling rushed is the enemy of genuine emotion.
If you're stressed, you won't look candid.
You'll look panicked. The other major factor for execution is styling. The aesthetic requires a luxury wardrobe, impeccable makeup, and carefully chosen accessories.
The styling does a lot of the heavy lifting.
It does a tremendous amount of the heavy lifting for the high fashion side of the equation. You can't wear an ill-fitting, off-the-rack suit and expect the photographer to make it look like a Vogue cover.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
Because when we talk about styling, I spot a massive contradiction in how we're defining this trend based on the materials.
What's the contradiction?
Well, the guidance explicitly lists choosing style over comfort as a major mistake to avoid. Because if you are physically uncomfortable, it entirely ruins your natural expressions.
Yes, that is true.
But literally in the same breath, we are emphasizing the absolute necessity of luxury wardrobe, structured gowns, and high-fashion tailoring. Doesn't a high-fashion look inherently require sacrificing a little bit of comfort?
I see where you're going with this.
I mean, high fashion is not sweatpants. It's corsetry, it's heavy fabrics, it's structural rigidity. How on earth can you demand extreme high fashion and complete physical comfort at the exact same time? It feels like we are asking for the impossible.
That is a fantastic pushback, and it really gets to the very heart of what luxury actually means in 2026.
Okay, enlighten me.
What you are describing is the historical definition of high fashion. In the past, you are absolutely right. High fashion almost always meant restriction. It meant suffering for the aesthetic.
Right, beauty is pain.
Exactly. But true modern luxury, particularly in bespoke wedding attire, is fundamentally different now. It is about incredible, almost invisible craftsmanship.
Invisible craftsmanship. What does that mean in practice?
It means the engineering of the garment is so advanced that it provides structure without constriction. Think about a bespoke tuxedo.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
A cheap suit is uncomfortable because the armholes are cut too low and the fabric is stiff. When you lift your arms, the whole jacket rides up and restricts your movement.
Do you feel like a robot?
Right. But a bespoke luxury tuxedo has high armholes, a floating canvas chest piece, and fabric that drapes perfectly to your specific measurements. It looks razor sharp and highly structured, but you can literally do gymnastics in it.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize the tailoring made that much of a difference.
It's night and day. And the same goes for bridal couture. Modern luxury gowns use internal corsetry that supports the body perfectly, distributing the weight of the dress so the bride can breathe, sit, and eat without feeling like her ribs are being crushed.
So the flawless tailoring is actually what creates the comfort, without losing any of that high fashion structure.
Exactly. And this circles back entirely to our core philosophy of real emotion. If a bride is in a beautifully structured editorial gown, but the boning is digging into her ribs so sharply she can't take a deep breath.
Or the groom's stiff leather shoes are giving him horrible blisters.
Right. Their faces will inevitably convey that physical tension. The camera captures everything. If you are uncomfortable, your smile will be tight, your eyes will look strained, your posture will be rigid.
You can't fake being comfortable.
You really can't. Physical discomfort entirely ruins the real emotion aspect of the photo. You will look like a model, yes, but a model in active pain.
Which is not the vibe we are going for.
Not at all. The point is this. Comfort is not the enemy of high fashion. Comfort is the mechanism that enables the candid emotion to shine through the high fashion. You invest in the bespoke luxury wardrobe so that you literally don't have to think about it on the day.
That makes a ton of sense. You shouldn't be fighting your clothes. Your clothes should simply be framing you.
Precisely.
And once you have the tailoring, the timeline, and the lighting perfectly aligned, it comes down to the most important tip of all, embracing the natural emotion.
Which is the hardest part for some people.
Yeah, the guidance specifically says, don't overthink the poses, let the genuine moments unfold. You just have to trust the fishbowl you built with your photographer.
You have to surrender to the process. And if you follow these steps, the benefits are immense. You get results that are truly timeless.
Not just trendy.
Right. They are highly personalized to your unique emotional footprint. Furthermore, you get a curated premium experience on the day itself because you aren't being barked at to say cheese every 5 minutes. You actually feel taken care of.
It sounds lovely, honestly.
And of course, the resulting images are immediately social media ready, which, whether we want to admit it or not, is incredibly important for modern digital sharing on platforms like Instagram, Pinterest, and whatever comes next.
Which is the ultimate goal for so many people right now. So to bring this massive topic all together, what we've really explored today is how the 2026 trend of high fashion editorial photography is truly a profound movement.
It's changing the landscape.
It's pushing us away from stiff, superficial perfection and toward authentic, artistic storytelling. It's successfully blending these gorgeous, highly curated luxury aesthetics with the messy, genuine, unscripted milestones of human connection.
And it does it beautifully.
And practically speaking, we've seen how the industry's fragmentation makes this hard to achieve on your own, and how platforms like Weddizer serve as the ultimate bridge stepping in to connect modern couples with the exact niche talent, full gallery verification, and critical educational guidance they need to make this ambitious vision a reality.
It is a beautiful evolution of how we document our lives. It elevates our most vulnerable moments into high art.
It really does.
But I want to leave you with a final lingering thought based on something we just touched on. We talked about how these authentic, deeply emotional photos are celebrated for being perfectly social media ready.
Right, for the grid.
But here is something to deeply ponder. When we plan our most private, vulnerable moments, like reading our vows or seeing our partner for the first time, with a subconscious awareness of exactly how social media ready the resulting photos will be, does the presence of the camera actually change the nature of the emotion itself?
Oh, wow. That's deep.
This is essentially the observer effect in physics, applied to human psychology. In our endless, highly curated quest to capture raw, unfiltered authenticity to eventually display for an audience, do we run the risk of turning our very real emotions into curated performances? Something for you to think about.